This is Point of View, exploring the Texas abortion debate with your host, Yemaya Jacinto.
Could you talk to me a little bit about your story as a woman who has received an abortion and what was your experience like?
Yeah. So when I was 21 years old, it was my senior year of college. I found out that I was pregnant and it was not an expected or planned pregnancy. I immediately knew I didn't want to continue with the pregnancy. It was not even like a hesitation in my mind. I knew, of course, I couldn't continue with this. Um, Specifically because, and I want to be sure to make note of the fact that no one has to justify their own decision makings. Everyone is valid in whatever context that they're in. In my particular context, it was my senior year of college. I was very close to the finish line. I was in not the healthiest of relationships. I didn't have a stable job that could sustain like an addition of another person to my life. And then beside the fact, at that time, my father, he was incarcerated at that time. And so lots of instability within my family life. It didn't feel like the correct decision for me to bring another person into the situation.
Emma goes on to detail her experience when scheduling an appointment at Planned Parenthood. She was able to qualify for financial assistance, however, because she resided in the state of Indiana at the time, she had to go through a total of 3 doctor's appointments in order to receive the abortion, including a pregnancy confirmation, an ultrasound, and the actual procedure. Nevertheless, Emma expressed her gratitude that she was able to receive a medical abortion prior to 8 weeks of pregnancy, which would be prohibited in the state of Indiana had she delayed her appointments. Had her abortion appointment been later, she would have been required a surgical abortion where private transportation would be necessary. Additionally, her abortion procedure happened during the winter where frequent pro-life protesters would be out of sight as opposed to the summertime.
All of those barriers to access truly do exist just to make it more difficult for someone to make this choice. And just honestly makes it more of a traumatizing experience that it doesn't need to be. It should be like a root canal. Like it should just be something you can schedule and be an option that's easy for you.
And so, were you ever offered any resources such as financial assistance to bring the pregnancy to full term? I know a lot of pro life argument is that, oh, well, we offer these women uh, like homes that they can live in with their children if they're low income or if they don't have the support. Were you ever offered any of these resources that they talk about, or was it just like you're pregnant, there you go home type of thing?
I was never offered any resources to continue with the pregnancy. I honestly don't think it would have been something I'd be very interested in, but that was never offered to
Did
me.
you notice any mental or emotional shifts from the procedure, or was it just kind of smooth sailing from there?
Honestly, what I the most impactful part of the experience for me was the amount of stigma around making this choice. And I really felt like I couldn't reach out to anyone in my family or anyone within my network to find some level of support in it. I was going through this completely by myself. Like that for me was a very difficult experience because I would have truly benefited from having the ability to speak about this with my family. But I grew up in a very traditional Mexican household, very Catholic. And so honestly, it was about 5 years later after I actually had the abortion, where I was chatting with my mom and she said, I'm going to go to this protest later on today. So I'm just, she was just like mentioning it casually. And I was like, oh, what are you going to go protest? And she's like, oh, we're going to go outside of the abortion clinic and protest outside of there. I'm going with the church. And I was like, okay. So I was like, for your consideration, I'm like, that's actually the exact same clinic where I had an abortion 5 years ago. I was like, and so you can make that choice however you want. It's like, but I just want to make you aware that your own child receives services from this clinic. It's benefited me. I've been able to move on with my life. And when you're standing out there and you're inserting yourself into someone else's private decision, you're just making that experience more difficult for them. And I would just appreciate if you would imagine me being in that scenario and how unhelpful you would have been in that process. And so she did not go and protest that day. She hasn't gone and protested with them since. And that was kind of for me a very healing experience of like, I don't have to keep this a secret anymore. I told my mom. It's a thing that happened, and through that process, I've become more of a resource for my different family members that just want to have a choice, or at least be able to have like a safe space to have that discussion. So it truly is a choice, not just something that you're cornered into.
As many of us have heard about the Texas heartbeat bill that was passed on the 1st of September, did you have any initial thoughts or feelings as a woman who has received an abortion? And how do you feel about it now?
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned, I've always grown up in red states, very Republican states. And so I had a lot of barriers to access in my abortion experience. And for me, it was just the awareness of the knowledge of knowing how much more difficult it is going to be for other people to receive abortion services. Had I been growing up in a rural community, had no access to public transportation, and thinking about, not being able to access an abortion after 6 weeks into the pregnancy, there's no choice left in that situation. You're essentially taking away people's choice. At the end of the day, people are prioritizing a hypothetical human over the person that's actually going to have to carry it. As a whole, I think it's inappropriate. I still think it's something that's not, should not be happening. And I actively, work to make sure I'm having these types of conversations with people to make sure we're raising awareness as to why it's wrong.
Would you recommend abortion as the first solution to maybe people who have unwanted pregnancies and are not ready to bring a child into the world? Or do you think that there could be another alternative to that?
Is coming into this in their own unique circumstances, right? And so for me, abortion was my first choice. That's the only option I saw. I had no interest in carrying a pregnancy to term, in figuring out adoption services, or keeping the child myself. I had an older sister just 2 years older than me who had 3 kids before the age of 21. And I had very closely witnessed how difficult that is, especially if you're not in a situation where you have a supportive partner. I had grown up in a household where my father was not the best partner to my mom. And so I very specifically had gone through these experiences of not being in stable households and witnessing my family members not be in stable households and not being able to provide that for their children. It's like, but am I going to be the best parent I could be when I'm 21 years old and I don't want this? Who is going to be the best parent in that situation? And so in my unique circumstances, abortion was the best option for me. Other people may see that differently. I want to honor everyone's individual choices and work towards a world where their choice is an accessible one and that they're able to make it.
What would you like to say to both adults and children? Because now I guess adolescents like myself are becoming involved in the conversation as the media spreads things. What would you say to those who feel that life starts at conception and consider abortion to be murder, essentially?
The first thing I would say to adults, to children, to people of any age, your body belongs to you. You have all of the right in the world to make the decisions that work best for you. And so it is inappropriate for anyone else to tell you what you should be doing with your body, to limit your choices in it, or to make decisions for you. I think the concept of bodily autonomy is so important for people of any age. Your body is your own. It's yours to make decisions with, and adults can guide you and provide some advice, but at the end of the day, you sustain that power. For people that believe that life starts at conception. My questions are, so does child support start at conception? When a immigrant woman without status is pregnant in the US, is she no longer qualifying for deportation because she's carrying a US citizen? We have to define those things, because it can't be that life starts at conception when it's convenient. What I often see is people that are pro-birth, not pro-life. And so you're pro me giving birth to this child, but have very little involvement in them actually having a life that is, fully fledged and happy and, financially supported. These people, in my perspective, are pro birthing, but doing very little else to make sure that the child in question would have quality of life. I think at the end of the day, it's just let people make their independent decisions. If you personally are anti-abortion, then don't have an abortion. But don't do all this active work to impact someone else's ability to receive those services.
Do you think that men should be involved in the conversation? Because I know that some men feel that, oh, well, if you're saying I don't have a choice in whether or not you decide to keep the offspring, right, then men should not have to pay child support or have any involvement whatsoever, if that's what you're saying. Do you think that men should have a say in this conversation, or do you think it should just be like the woman's body, she makes that choice for herself?
Yeah, well, I guess first I just want to add in that people of all genders can receive abortions. And so not just a women's issue, just on that note, because all people, anyone that can carry a child can receive an abortion. Specifically, however, when it comes to men and what their role is in making that decision, at the end of the day, it is the person who's going to have to carry the pregnancy's decision to make. I do want to honor the fact that it might not be the ideal decision for the man in question. Maybe they were really excited about the possibility of having a baby, but their excitement or their disappointment around the decision, that doesn't supersede the fact that someone else is going to actually have to do the physical job of carrying the child.